Have you ever stood beneath a stormy sky, listening to thunder rolling across the mountains, feeling the air tremble with energy that seems to carry the voice of something far greater? For the ancient Greeks, that voice was not just sound, but the presence of Zeus, the mighty king of the gods, ruler of Olympus, and eternal symbol of divine power and authority. This is not just a story of thunderbolts or myths of conquest, but a journey into the essence of leadership, justice, and wisdom that Zeus embodied for gods and mortals alike. He was more than a legend. He was a force shaping how people understood law, honor, and balance, reminding the world that true authority demands both strength and responsibility. From sacred oaths sworn under his name to the thunderbolt blazing as his emblem, Zeus became a timeless reminder of the link between power, order, and destiny itself. In this episode, we will explore the legacy of Zeus, tracing his story from divine birth to his influence on culture, philosophy, and the imagination of generations across time. So, settle into the rhythm of ancient storytelling. Close your eyes and listen as the thunder calls us back to the myths where Zeus still reigns eternal. Imagine a world before heroes, before empires, when the heavens and earth were still shaping themselves, and the Titans ruled the cosmos with strength and fear. At the center of this age was Cronus, the Titan king. He was powerful, but he carried fear within him, for a prophecy warned that one of his children would rise to overthrow him. Cronus sought to resist fate. Each time his wife, Rhea, bore a child, he swallowed the newborn whole, hiding them away, silencing their cries, and denying them the light of day. Rhea wept silently, her heart heavy with grief. She longed for one child to live, to escape the cruel destiny of the others. When her sixth child was born, she chose hope. This child was Zeus. Small, fragile, yet carrying within him the spark of destiny. Rhea, torn between fear and love, chose love and made a daring plan to protect him. She placed Zeus into the care of loyal protectors, then wrapped a stone in swaddling cloth and handed it to Cronus. The Titan swallowed it, never sensing the deception. So Zeus was spared. His life began not in a golden palace, but hidden in a cave on Crete, nurtured by nature and by those who risked everything to keep him safe. Some tales say nymphs raised him with songs and honey. Others tell of a gentle goat, Amalthea, feeding him milk that gave him strength for the destiny awaiting him. Guardians clashed their shields, drowning out his infant cries, so Cronus would not hear and discover the truth. Every sound of thunder began as the hidden cry of a child. Zeus grew stronger each day, shaped not by dominance, but by survival, by care, and by love. He was more than a hidden child. He was a symbol of hope and renewal. His beginning was not of thunderbolts, but of quiet sacrifice, a mother's courage, a protector's loyalty, and the reminder that greatness is born from struggle and devotion. This was the seed of leadership. A true leader understands the weight of trust, the bond of community, and the strength that grows from being protected and nurtured. The prophecy Cronus feared had not ended, it had only begun. In Zeus, destiny was alive, waiting for the moment when a new age would rise and a new order would unfold. From secrecy and protection came resilience. From love and sacrifice came power. Zeus was the spark of change, the hidden child who would become the eternal king of the gods. Greatness often emerges from struggle. Hope survives in the darkest places. And destiny, though resisted, always finds its way forward, shaping those chosen to carry its flame. Zeus's story begins here, in a mountain cave, with the whispers of prophecy and the promise of power, waiting for the world to call his name across eternity. From the quiet cave in Crete, Zeus grew stronger with each season. His body gained strength, but so did his mind, his spirit, and his understanding of the world around him. He was not raised in golden halls or among flatterers. Instead, his childhood was shaped by nature, by necessity, by hunger and safety, by fear and hope, by isolation and love. These contrasts built resilience, and resilience became his greatest strength. Even as a child, Zeus sensed destiny waiting, calling him beyond the mountains toward a larger purpose. But before stepping into that destiny, Zeus needed to learn the meaning of leadership. Leadership is not given by birthright. It is earned through wisdom and trust. Even in youth, he carried an aura that drew others to him. Nymphs, guardians, even animals of the mountain seemed to recognize his presence and gather near him. He was kind but firm, protective yet commanding respect. In this balance of compassion and authority lay the first seeds of the leader he would one day become. Living hidden, Zeus also learned humility. He knew what it meant to be powerless and vulnerable, and this memory would guide him when true power was his to wield. The prophecy could not be escaped. One day, he must confront Cronus and free his siblings. This fate was certain, but Zeus could prepare himself to meet it with strength. The mountains became his training ground. He practiced with wooden weapons, learned the swiftness of wind, the steadiness of earth, and the patience of justice in simple acts. These were not grand battles, but they mattered. A leader who cannot govern the small will never govern the great. Zeus's lessons were planted in ordinary struggles. When Zeus spoke, others listened. His voice carried calm authority and youthful fire, a rare blend that inspired trust even before he bore the thunderbolt of Olympus. Yet he never forgot his beginnings. He remembered being a hidden child, protected by love and courage. That memory kept him grounded, shaping him into a true leader. As Zeus matured, the cave that sheltered him felt too small. The mountains could no longer contain him. It was time to step into the greater story of his destiny. But he did not rush. He carried with him patience, wisdom, and the knowledge that leadership is not taking power, it is guiding power and bearing it with dignity. Zeus was no longer just a child of prophecy. He was becoming the leader who would unite his siblings, challenge the Titans, and establish a new divine order. The rise of leadership began here, not with thunder or lightning, but with steady growth. A hidden child became a leader, ready to shoulder both power and responsibility. When we think of Zeus, one image rises above all: the thunderbolt blazing across the vast and endless sky. It is the emblem that defines him, the sign by which gods and mortals recognize the depth of his power. But the thunderbolt was never only a weapon, it was a message from the heavens, a voice of divine order and awe. Its story begins long before Zeus held it in his mighty hand, born from fire, storm, and destiny. For the ancient world, thunder and lightning were mysteries, feared yet revered as whispers of the divine. The Greeks believed the Cyclopes forged the thunderbolt, crafting it with fire, storm, and eternal flame. When Zeus freed them, they gave him this gift, a weapon of light, forged as a sign of his destiny. It was more than strength, more than destruction. It was the symbol of balance, justice, and rightful rule. To wield the thunderbolt was to hold responsibility, to guard the world against chaos and arrogance. Every flash across the heavens reminded mortals that order, not chance, shaped their fragile lives. Farmers looked to the sky, sailors prayed at sea, kings swore oaths beneath Zeus's watchful gaze. The thunder was his voice, the lightning his gaze, storms his reminder that divine power ruled above. Yet the thunderbolt was also a lesson. Power without wisdom becomes tyranny. Strength without justice becomes ruin. Zeus understood this truth, holding back his hand, knowing when to strike and when to remain still. He walked among mortals in disguise, listening, testing, watching, before thunder ever filled the air. The thunderbolt symbolized leadership itself. True power is not constant, but reserved for moments that matter. When Zeus cast his bolt, it was final, unmistakable, a declaration of justice and divine authority. For him, the thunderbolt was balance, fear, and respect, justice and mercy, strength and compassion. It shaped him into a god not only feared, but deeply revered, honored as the guardian of order. Even today, lightning still symbolizes power, speed, and energy, carrying echoes of Zeus's ancient legacy. But beyond the spark lies a truth. Power guided by wisdom becomes protection. Authority becomes leadership. Zeus's thunderbolt was not light alone. It was law over lawlessness, hope over despair, order over chaos. When storms shook the mountains, mortals heard not only nature, but the living voice of their god. In thunder, they heard his presence. In lightning, they saw his warning. In storms, they felt his hand. The skies were never silent, for Zeus's power was alive, watching, guiding, and protecting the world below. Thus, the thunderbolt endures, not just in myth, but in every symbol of strength carried through time. When people thought of Zeus, they saw not only the ruler of the skies, but the guardian of justice. He was the divine protector of law, fairness, and the sacred order that shaped mortal life. Zeus was not simply a storm god. He watched over human actions, guided oaths, and punished dishonesty. To swear by his name was sacred, binding one's words to truth under the weight of divine order. Breaking such an oath was more than betrayal, it was an offense against the universe itself. The Greeks believed Zeus heard every promise and judged every lie, ensuring justice was served. Kings and judges invoked him before decisions, for human power fades, but Zeus's justice endures. Hospitality was sacred, guarded by Zeus Xenios, protector of travelers and guests across the land. To welcome a guest was to honor Zeus, for in strangers the gods themselves might appear. Justice under Zeus was balance, restraining arrogance, and uplifting humility. Fairness woven into life. Many myths show Zeus acting not with thunder, but with fairness, guiding both mortals and gods. When arrogance rose too high, Zeus reminded all that no one was greater than justice itself. When respect was shown, blessings followed, teaching that fairness brings harmony and divine favor. Imagine a farmer praying to Zeus not only for rain, but for a just and fair season. A sailor called upon him for winds that were honest and true, not merely strong or swift. Zeus's justice lived in daily life. It was in choices, in words, in the bonds between people. It was not cruel, but protective, reminding mortals that imbalance always carried inevitable consequences. Zeus proved that true authority is not only strength, but the will to guard fairness for all. He was present not only in storms, but in conscience, in honesty, in the fairness of leaders. His thunderbolt was his emblem, but justice was his lasting legacy, eternal and unshakable. Through Zeus, mortals learned that power may fade, but truth and fairness are forever enduring. When thunder rolled across the mountains, people heard not only storm, but the voice of justice. It was the echo of an ancient truth: justice watches, fairness matters, and truth endures above all. Among Zeus's many roles, one of the most human and divine was his guardianship of hospitality. The Greeks called him Zeus Xenios, protector of strangers, travelers, and guests who sought shelter. Hospitality was not simple kindness, it was sacred law, watched and guarded by the king of gods. Travel in the ancient world was dangerous, with long roads, fragile ships, and many unseen risks. A weary traveler relied on the mercy of strangers for food, shelter, and the safety of rest. To refuse this was not only cruel, it was an offense against Zeus himself, guardian of guests. Every guest carried mystery, for the Greeks believed gods sometimes walked disguised among mortals. To welcome a stranger was to honor the gods. To reject them was to risk divine judgment. One famous tale tells of Zeus and Hermes visiting a poor village disguised as simple travelers. Door after door turned them away, until an elderly couple, Philemon and Baucis, welcomed them warmly. Their kindness was rewarded, their cottage transformed into a temple, their names remembered for eternity. The rest of the village learned a harsher lesson, punished for failing the sacred duty of hospitality. The message was clear. Hospitality was not choice, but sacred law under the eye of Zeus. In Greek life, guests were welcomed first with food and drink, even before asking their names. This ritual was not mere custom, it was devotion, a way to honor Zeus through daily action. Hospitality stretched beyond homes. Cities and temples offered strangers shelter as a sacred responsibility. Festivals too reminded people that bonds of respect united communities under Zeus's eternal gaze. Hospitality created balance. Hosts gave what they could. Guests received with gratitude, harmony born between them. For rulers, it was a measure of honor. Kings were judged by how they treated guests. To mistreat an emissary or traveler was to dishonor Zeus, a shame no throne could endure. This shows us a gentler side of Zeus, not only the thunderer, but guardian of daily kindness. He was present at the hearth, the unseen protector of every weary traveler who knocked for rest. Zeus taught that greatness was not found in battles, but in bread, water, and open doors. True piety was measured not in wealth, but in generosity and respect for divine hospitality. Even today, hospitality remains sacred across cultures, a bridge that unites hearts beyond difference. To open one's door, to share food, remains a timeless act of respect and humanity. The myths of Zeus Zenios teach us that kindness carries divine weight, and justice honors compassion. Every act of hospitality weaves into the fabric of law, fairness, and sacred balance in life. So when we welcome the stranger, we honor not only them, but something far greater above. In every kind gesture, the ancient legacy of Zeus Zenios lives, carrying the blessing of the skies. Fate, for the ancient Greeks, was not just a concept, it was a force, ancient and unyielding, older even than the gods themselves. At the heart of Olympus, Zeus carried the burden of balancing fate. He was not only the wielder of thunder, but also the guardian of destiny's order. The Moirai, the three fates, wove the threads of every life. Clotho spun the thread. Lachesis measured its length. Atropos cut it when the time came. Not even Zeus could undo their work, showing that even gods bowed to higher law. Yet within this limit, Zeus shaped balance, keeping destiny aligned with justice. From his throne on Olympus, he watched mortals and immortals with steady eyes. Every choice, every oath, every act was weighed against the design of fate. Zeus was not fate itself, but its steward, protecting harmony in the grand order. When arrogance threatened destiny, Zeus restored balance to the weave of life. When despair dimmed hope, he reminded mortals that fate carried meaning and purpose. A famous tale tells of Sarpedon, Zeus's son, fighting in the Trojan War. Fate decreed his death at the hands of Patroclus, and Zeus's heart broke. Homer says Zeus wept golden tears as he considered saving his beloved son. But Hera reminded him, saving one son would lead all gods to save theirs. Destiny would collapse, and the threads of life would lose meaning and order. So Zeus allowed Sarpedon's fate, though sorrow weighed heavy on his divine heart. His choice showed strength, accepting law above even his deepest love. Here we see Zeus's duality, the tender father, yet the protector of universal law. His role carried thunder in one hand and restraint in the other. The Greeks learned from this that even suffering had meaning in the weave of life. Fate was not chaos, but part of a design beyond mortal understanding. Zeus's task was not to erase pain, but to preserve balance and order. Like a judge in an eternal court, he upheld the laws written by the fates. This image gave mortals strength, knowing their struggles were not unseen. Even gods bore sorrow, yet justice remained unbroken under Zeus's watch. Fate was inevitable, but so too was justice under his eternal gaze. No oath, promise, or betrayal escaped the scales of Zeus's judgment. Mortals could not escape destiny, but they could live with honor before him. Zeus's authority came not from breaking fate, but from guiding it with wisdom. His restraint was his power, and his balance was his true throne. The myths remind us that life is fragile, destiny powerful, and justice eternal. Sorrow may come, but it carries meaning within the fabric of fate. And at the center stands Zeus, the steward of destiny, guardian of balance, forever. Among Zeus's many roles, one of the most sacred was his guardianship over oaths. The Greeks believed that words carried divine weight, especially when spoken before the gods. An oath was never a casual promise, but a binding thread woven with trust and consequence. At the center of that bond stood Zeus, the enforcer of truth and guardian of justice. He was called Zeus Horkios, the god who watched over every vow and sacred word. To swear falsely was not only dishonor, it was defiance against the authority of Zeus himself. The Greeks saw truth as divine, while lies threatened to disturb the harmony of the cosmos. Zeus, as protector of justice, ensured the weight of words was never forgotten. Imagine a courtroom where a witness swore by the altar under Zeus's eternal gaze. Their words were not only for men to hear, but for the king of gods to judge. A false oath might escape men's eyes, but never escaped Zeus's eternal justice. The Greeks believed fate itself would catch those who broke their sacred word. Myths often reminded mortals of this divine law, weaving it into great epics. The Trojan War, too, was bound by oaths sworn before Zeus's watchful eye. When Helen's suitors swore to defend her marriage, they pledged in Zeus's name. When Paris took Helen, those oaths were called upon, binding kings and warriors. The war was not only about love or honor, it was about promises to Zeus. Breaking them would have brought ruin far greater than the war itself. These tales reminded Greeks that words were never light, they carried divine law. Even kings and rulers were bound by oaths. No matter their throne or power, Zeus ensured that no mortal stood above the sacred law of promises. This made him more than a god of thunder, he was the embodiment of trust. Contracts, alliances, and treaties carried weight under Zeus's eternal oversight. Merchants swore oaths of honesty, and families pledged loyalty in marriage. Every word once spoken echoed to Olympus and fell under Zeus's gaze. He was feared as the punisher of liars, but also loved as protector of the honest. Those who kept their word lived with dignity and favor beneath his sky. The lesson was clear. Truth was sacred, and deceit carried heavy consequences. Zeus Horkios embodied the reminder that language itself was a sacred bond. Even today, echoes of this belief remain in courts, vows, and sacred pledges. To speak truth is to honor Zeus. To break an oath is to dishonor trust itself. In the ancient world, every oath was more than words. It was a bridge to Zeus. As we enter the final part of our journey, Zeus no longer belongs only to ancient Greece. His myths are echoes of imagination, shaping how people understood power, justice, and destiny. Zeus did not fade when temples crumbled or when new faiths rose. He stretched across centuries, influencing art, literature, and even ideas of leadership itself. For the Greeks, Zeus was more than a sky god with thunderbolts. He embodied justice, the weight of oaths, and the belief that power had consequences. He reminded mortals and gods that balance and restraint mattered in every decision. When Rome rose, Zeus did not disappear. He simply became Jupiter. Roman poets like Ovid and Virgil carried his image into their epics. Philosophers debated his place in the cosmos, while people prayed for his protection. Even as centuries passed, the essence of Zeus was reshaped but never erased. In the Christian era, temples fell silent. Yet Zeus lived on in art and poetry. Medieval scholars preserved his stories in manuscripts, keeping his memory alive. The Renaissance painted him once more, dramatic and powerful in the skies. Poets and sculptors gave him new form, and philosophers made him a symbol. Shakespeare invoked Jove in his plays to express power and destiny. Milton echoed Zeus's thunder in Paradise Lost, weaving him into cosmic battles. By then, Zeus had become not just myth, but a cultural archetype of authority. In modern times, Zeus appears in novels, films, and even video games. Children meet him in Percy Jackson, while movies make him thunder again. His image is used sometimes as mighty, sometimes flawed, even sometimes comic. He is everywhere. Because Zeus has become a timeless symbol beyond belief. Why does he endure? Because he represents universal struggles of humanity. Justice, power, destiny, and balance, these are as real today as in Greece. Zeus shows the paradox of leadership: flawed yet necessary, feared yet respected. His flaws are clear: jealousy, pride, reckless desire, and harsh judgment. And yet, he always remained king, for someone had to hold the thunderbolt. Someone had to decide when storms would rage and when skies would clear. That is the lesson. Authority is dangerous, but also essential to life. Power can destroy, but it can also protect and preserve. Zeus embodies both sides of leadership, its glory and its shadow. He reminds us to ask how power should be used in our own time. Picture him seated high, thunderbolt in hand, watching the horizon with resolve. He is not only a relic of myth, but a warning and a symbol. Zeus whispers that power must be balanced with justice in every age. That fate, no matter how harsh, carries meaning for mortals and gods. The skies above, stormy or calm, reflect truths that are eternal. Zeus may no longer rule the heavens, but his presence still lingers. He lives in stories, in art, in language, and in imagination itself. Perhaps this is true immortality, not in temples, but in memory forever. Imagine yourself as a weary traveler, wandering the rugged roads of ancient Greece. The sun burns above, your sandals worn, your body aching from the endless journey. At last, a humble house appears, with smoke curling gently from its hearth. You approach with hope for food, water, and a place to rest your head. In ancient Greece, this moment was more than kindness. It was a sacred act. To welcome the stranger was not simply polite, it was a divine command. For any stranger might be more than mortal. The gods often walked in disguise. Zeus was not only the god of thunder, he was Zeus Xenios, protector of guests. He guarded the bond between host and traveler, making hospitality a sacred duty. To mistreat a guest was to insult Zeus himself, an unforgivable act. In villages and cities, this law shaped every welcome and every shared meal. The rule was simple: feed and shelter the guest before asking their name. The guest in turn respected the host, honoring the gift of kindness given. This sacred law bound communities, turning strangers into allies across the Greek world. And behind it all, Zeus watched silently, ensuring the law was never forgotten. The story of Baucis and Philemon shows this spirit of hospitality clearly. Two poor villagers welcomed strangers, offering bread and wine from their meager supply. The strangers were gods in disguise, testing human hearts for kindness and respect. Others had turned them away, but Baucis and Philemon gave what they had. Their reward was not gold, but the blessing of eternal honor and love. Through such stories, people learned that every act of kindness reached Zeus himself. Hospitality was more than custom. It was a ritual blessed by heaven. Even ambassadors in foreign lands were treated as honored guests of Zeus Zenios. To harm them was unthinkable, for his wrath would surely follow the offender. In a world without inns, safe roads, or modern travel, this law gave peace. It made dangerous journeys safer, creating trust where fear might have ruled. Zeus was always invoked as the eternal witness of this sacred bond. Even today, echoes of this law remain in human kindness and generosity. The Greeks taught that hospitality is a bridge between strangers and communities. Every guest carried dignity, and every act of welcome reflected something divine. Zeus Zenios may no longer be worshipped in marble temples or shrines, yet his spirit lingers in every shared meal, every open door, every smile. Through simple kindness, Zeus lives on not through thunder, but through humanity itself. Hospitality was never only custom, it was a sacred bond of trust and respect. And Zeus, eternal and watchful, remained its guardian for gods and mortals alike. Close your eyes and picture Mount Olympus, where clouds gather and the halls of the gods shine. On the great throne sits Zeus, the king of gods and men, ruling the skies with power. But Zeus is not only the ruler of thunder and storms, he is also a father. The Greeks called him Father of gods and men, for he stood at the heart of creation. He gave order to the cosmos, upheld justice, and watched over mortals with a guiding hand. Like a father, he could be stern and demanding, yet protective and full of care. Among the gods, Zeus often played the role of mediator and judge of disputes. When rivalries rose on Olympus, it was Zeus who calmed the storm and restored balance. His authority came not only from power, but from trust, respect, and even fear. No oath among the gods held weight unless Zeus stood as the eternal witness. No decision was final until Zeus gave his nod, binding fate to his will. Athena gave wisdom, Apollo gave light, Poseidon ruled the seas, yet Zeus alone balanced them all, holding harmony in his fatherly hands. To the Greeks, he was not only father to gods, but father to men as well. He cared for humanity in ways not always gentle, but always meaningful. He sent rains for crops, guided kings in justice, and punished those who broke sacred law. When mortals welcomed strangers or honored oaths, they honored Zeus himself. Sometimes his lessons came through storms, trials, or even cruel twists of fate. But in struggle, the Greeks saw his hand, shaping life with purpose and meaning. His fatherhood was reflected in countless myths and stories of heroes and gods. Zeus's children filled the world: Heracles, Perseus, Helen of Troy, and many more. Through them, his influence spread across history, shaping destinies of mortals and nations. Beyond myths, Zeus symbolized protection, justice, and the sacred balance of order. He watched over kings to ensure fairness and protected the weak through law. Farmers prayed for rain, sailors prayed for safe passage, kings prayed for wisdom. In every prayer, Zeus stood as father, both stern and protective, guiding their path. He was not without flaws. His myths reveal passions, mistakes, and human-like desires. Yet, in his imperfection, he became even more powerful as a symbol of truth. The Greeks believed that even gods carried human qualities, reflecting their own struggles. If Zeus could balance strength and justice, mortals too could follow his example. His role as father shows that leadership is not only about power, but duty. It means guiding, protecting, and teaching, even when the lessons are harsh. When the Greeks called upon Zeus Pater, they sought more than divine thunder. They reached for the eternal Father who bound gods and mortals in fate and law. Zeus, the father of skies, of gods, and of men, forever holding balance in his hands. Close your eyes and imagine a world without law, where power ruled and justice was only a dream. In that fragile world, Zeus rose as the guardian of order and fairness for gods and men. He was not only the wielder of thunder, but also the eternal keeper of justice and balance. The Greeks believed justice was sacred, woven into Zeus's will and as eternal as the skies. To act unjustly was to defy Zeus himself and invite the weight of his guiding hand. Zeus's justice often came as lessons rather than punishments, shaping balance over vengeance. He showed that hubris and cruelty could never endure, for justice always finds its way. Those who broke oaths, harmed guests, or oppressed the weak stood under his watchful eye. His purpose was not revenge, but restoring harmony, even through storms or twists of fate. Kings on earth carried Zeus's will, entrusted with power and the sacred duty of fairness. A king who ruled unjustly lost honor, for Zeus's shadow loomed as the eternal judge. Even among gods, Zeus's word was final, binding all disputes with the weight of fate. He was also protector of suppliants, guarding those who sought mercy or refuge. To harm the helpless or betray the sacred bond of trust was to defy Zeus. His justice was deeply human, living not only in kings, but in ordinary lives. Every kindness to strangers, every act of fairness honored Zeus and his eternal law. Yet his justice was not always simple, often harsh or hard to understand. To the Greeks, justice was not easy. It was balance, larger than human sight. Rain could save one village while bringing flood to another, yet it was still order. Storms seemed cruel, but they carried meaning, restoring balance in the world of men. The myths remind us of this eternal truth again and again across generations. Ixion betrayed the sacred trust of hospitality, and Zeus's justice fell upon him. Sisyphus, cunning and deceitful, endured endless toil as a symbol of arrogance undone. Justice, for the Greeks, was divine breath, flowing through every oath and promise. To honor justice was to honor Zeus himself, the one who bound heaven and earth. The lesson shines clear. Power without justice is only empty thunder without meaning. Justice, tempered by wisdom, creates peace, balance, and the dignity of all life. The Greeks sought not perfection in Zeus, but guidance through his myths and storms. They learned storms carried purpose and that fairness was strength, not weakness. When we speak of Zeus today, we recall not only thunder in the sky, we recall a timeless truth. Justice is the pillar upon which power must rest. True authority lies not in ruling, but in ruling with fairness and wisdom. That is the legacy of Zeus, the eternal guardian of justice for gods and men. Close your eyes and imagine the night sky, stars glowing like lanterns, silent keepers of destiny. For the Greeks, Those stars were more than light. They were signs of fate written across the heavens. And at the center of this cosmic design stood Zeus, ruler of Olympus, keeper of thunder and order. Yet even Zeus, with all his power, was bound to something greater, the eternal thread of fate. The Greeks saw fate not as chains, but as rhythm, woven by the three Moirai, the sisters of destiny. They spun, measured, and cut the thread of life. And even Zeus was within their weaving. No storm, no thunderbolt could break what was already written in the fabric of time. Zeus did not create destiny, but he enforced it, upholding its balance across gods and mortals. He was guardian of fate's order, guiding all beings to their destined ends with unseen hands. To the Greeks, fate was not cruel but necessary, giving meaning where chaos might have ruled. Think of heroes bound by fate. Achilles blazing briefly with glory, Odysseus wandering seas unending. Behind their struggles, Zeus watched, guiding, ensuring fate's design unfolded as it was meant to. Zeus was a paradox supreme ruler, yet also servant of destiny's eternal law. From this paradox came wisdom. True power lies not in defying fate, but in accepting it. His storms were never random. Each thunderbolt carried meaning. Each wind whispered destiny's voice. Mortals prayed not to escape fate, but to face it with strength under Zeus's guidance. He could not erase what was woven, but he gave courage to endure the path ahead. Thus, Zeus became not only ruler but teacher, showing humanity to live with fate's rhythm. Fate was no enemy. It was the dance of life, a thread binding all existence together. Zeus taught that wisdom was balance between free will and inevitability, choice and surrender. His greatness lay not in rewriting destiny, but in guarding its eternal order with resolve. Through him, Greeks learned that fate was not punishment, but purpose hidden within the struggle. When thunder rolled, it was not mere storm, but the echo of fate through Zeus's voice. The stars above, storms below, and lives in between, all tied by destiny's eternal thread. Zeus stood as keeper of fate, never above it, but guiding within its sacred design. His power was more than thunder. It was wisdom, born of surrender to life's eternal weave. That is the legacy of Zeus and fate. Not defiance, not despair, but harmony with destiny. The story of Zeus was never free from conflict. To be king among gods and men was both a gift and a burden. He ruled Olympus with might, but challenges always lingered near his throne. One of the greatest was Typhon, a monster born of Gaia and Tartarus. He had countless heads, wings, and coils that seemed to brush the sky. His roars shook mountains, and his fiery breath scorched the earth. The Olympians trembled, many fleeing in disguise as animals. But Zeus stood firm, gathering his thunderbolts to face the chaos. The clash was titanic storm against fire, thunder against raw earth. The skies split open, lightning raged, and the ground shook beneath them. At first, Typhon overpowered Zeus, binding him with coils of iron strength. He tore away Zeus's sinews, leaving the king helpless in a dark cave. For a moment, Olympus seemed lost, its ruler broken. But Hermes came, restoring Zeus's sinews and renewing his strength. The king rose again, furious, with thunderbolts blazing in his hands. The second battle was cataclysmic, shaking heaven and earth alike. Zeus hurled fire, each bolt striking Typhon with divine fury. Rivers boiled, forests burned, and mountains crumbled under their war. Finally, Zeus crushed Typhon and hurled him beneath Mount Etna. There, his roars and fire became volcanic eruptions that shook Sicily. This victory was not just battle, it was the declaration of cosmic order. By subduing chaos, Zeus secured his eternal rule over gods and mortals. To the Greeks, volcanoes and tremors were Typhon's rage kept in chains. Yet Zeus's wrath did not fall only upon monsters of the earth. Mortals, too, felt his fury when they dared to defy him. Salmoneus, a king, once mocked Zeus by imitating thunder. He dragged kettles with his chariot, casting torches like false lightning. He demanded worship, claiming he was Zeus in mortal form. But the god of thunder struck him with a single bolt. Salmoneus vanished in flame, a warning against mortal arrogance. Zeus's power was both protector and punisher, justice and destruction. His thunder defended order, but it also punished hubris without mercy. Even Hera, his own wife, felt his wrath when she betrayed him. Once, she conspired with Poseidon and Athena to bind him, but Zeus broke free, enraged, and punished her before all Olympus. He hung Hera with golden chains, her cries echoing in the heavens. The warning was clear: no god could rise against the Storm King. And so Zeus's wrath became a law of the universe itself. Order could not exist without authority, and power demanded respect. Every thunderstorm carried his voice, every lightning bolt his warning, every quake and eruption was a reminder of battles fought. To the ancients, Zeus was not only ruler, but the storm itself. And storms, though feared, were revered, for they held the balance of all. When we think of Zeus, we see lightning, storms, and his mighty throne. But Zeus was far more than a god of thunder and clouds. To the Greeks, he was justice itself, the keeper of cosmic order. He was Zeus Xenios, protector of travelers and sacred hospitality. Hospitality was holy. Feeding strangers was a duty under Zeus's law. To harm or mock a guest was to insult Zeus himself. King Lycaon once broke this sacred trust in a cruel test. When Zeus came disguised, Lycaon served him human flesh. Zeus revealed himself, furious, and cursed Lycaon into a wolf. This story showed justice was swift, fierce, and transformative under Zeus. But Zeus's justice was not only wrath, it was also protection. He was Zeus Horkios, guardian of oaths and keeper of truth. Any broken vow sworn in his name invited thunderous punishment. For the Greeks, oaths were the foundation of trust and society. Every storm was a reminder that lies did not go unseen. Yet Zeus also judged disputes, weighing gods and mortals alike. His throne was not only power, it was a divine court of law. Paris's judgment of the goddesses brought war, yet Zeus allowed fate. Justice sometimes meant letting destiny unfold, even through suffering. He was also Zeus Agoraios, protector of the marketplace and law. Here he watched over trade, fairness, and the voice of the people. Zeus's justice stretched into every corner of Greek life and culture. Yet Zeus himself was imperfect, with passions, anger, and contradictions. Still, justice was not perfection. It was balance against chaos. Zeus's authority was the storm clearing the air, fierce yet necessary. People prayed to Zeus for fairness, not mercy alone. Kings were reminded that no throne rose higher than Olympus. Ordinary people knew Zeus heard broken promises and punished hubris. He was the all-seeing God who balanced wrath and protection. To swear by his name was to call upon divine law. In justice, Zeus was not only king, he was conscience of the cosmos. Every lightning bolt was a reminder of order and sacred duty. Every thunderclap was law, echoing across the hills and seas. That is why Zeus endures not just as storm, but as justice eternal. Zeus was more than the ruler of Olympus. He was the eternal symbol of power, authority, and divine order. His throne was not just a seat, it was the center of justice, balance, and the fate of gods and men. Every god turned to him for guidance. Every mortal felt his presence in thunder, storms, and the silence of the stars. His power was not born of might alone. It was forged through endurance, battles fought, and trials overcome. When he rose against the Titans, it was not only brute strength, it was wisdom, strategy, and unshakable will that brought him victory. The lightning bolts he wielded were not mere weapons. They were sacred symbols of authority, gifts of eternal dominion. Yet power was never simple for Zeus. It was both a gift and a burden, both glory and responsibility. He punished arrogance when mortals or gods forgot their place, but he rewarded loyalty, piety, and courage with his favor. Zeus taught that true authority demands responsibility. Without justice, even the mightiest throne would crumble. His myths became lessons for kings and rulers of Greece. A king might hold armies or gold, but without balance, he had no true power. Even his flaws revealed a deeper truth. Power is not the absence of weakness, but the strength to rise above it. To mortals, Zeus was a constant reminder of divine authority. Farmers heard him in storms. Sailors prayed to him in restless seas. Kings offered sacrifices before laws or battles, seeking his blessing. To defy Zeus was to defy order itself. His name echoed in temples, homes, and marketplaces. Zeus, the protector of strangers, the guardian of oaths, the arbiter of fate. He was feared, respected, and honored in equal measure. His legacy reached beyond myths into every corner of Greek life. The thunderbolt became a timeless symbol of authority. The throne of Zeus became every king's dream. Rule with justice and wisdom. Even today, his name carries the weight of power. Zeus reminds us of the eternal questions of leadership. What is the balance between justice and strength? How do we carry the burden of power without falling to tyranny? Zeus's reign was not bound by time or mortal memory. His thunder still echoes across the world, carrying his eternal legacy. He was more than a god of storms. He was the embodiment of duty, justice, and the eternal struggle of power. That is why Zeus remains the eternal symbol of authority. His legacy continues to shape how we understand what it means to lead,